Welcome back once again, listeners, to the Dorks Talk Sports podcast. I am your host, Jeremy. On this episode, I will be riding solo as J-Smooth is currently out of state. He may be out of country for all I know. He's a traveling man and he's out there earning the big bucks, but he will be back here soon. Let me remind our listeners, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and on Twitter. You can listen to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, and Google Podcasts. We are slowly trying to get onto Apple Podcasts as well, currently sacrificing a few young goats, but we will get there one day for all you iTunes listeners out there. On this episode, I will be taking a look at Week 2 of the NFL season. J-Smooth was able to get me his picks this week, so I'll be able to give you his picks as well as my picks. Taking a look back at Week 1, looks like I was able to get 10 out of the 16 games chosen correctly, while I believe J-Smooth also had about 10 picks correct. Let's see if his picks and my picks match up this week as well. Let's get right to it with the big game tomorrow night, Thursday night football. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Carolina Panthers. Tampa Bay's coming off of a terrible performance against the San Francisco 49ers, and Jameis Winston looked awful. So in this game, I will have to go with the Carolina Panthers, who looked good against the Rams in a losing effort despite a poor performance from Cam Newton. And it looks like J-Smooth is going with Carolina as well, so it looks like we have the same pick. And then looking forward towards Sunday, J-Smooth has the Chargers defeating the Detroit Lions, who tied last week in Arizona. I would have to agree with him there. The Chargers looked pretty good last week in defeating the Indianapolis Colts, who provided a much more competitive game than I think people thought they would be able to, with Andrew Luck recently retiring right before the season started. And then speaking of those Colts, they head to Tennessee next week, where J-Smooth has the Titans defeating the Colts, and I would have to agree with him as well. I liked what I saw out of Tennessee last week in Cleveland. Cleveland came into this season with a lot of hype, with a lot of energy. Tennessee went in there and shut that down pretty quick. That defense looked good. Mariota played well, and Derrick Henry ran the ball very effectively. So I would see Tennessee defeating Indianapolis this week. Next game up, it looks like we have the Dallas Cowboys at the Washington Redskins. Dallas looked real good in defeating the New York Giants last week, but that may be more to the Giants not being a good team compared to how good the Cowboys are. And the Redskins blew a 17-point lead in Philadelphia. Although they looked really good in that first half, they did not look good at all in the second half. Looks like J-Smooth is going with Dallas over Washington. I'm going to have to disagree with him there. I think Washington's going to bounce back with another big effort, this time for an entire game, not just one half, and they're going to take that home opener against Dallas this Sunday. Next up, big game for the Pittsburgh Steelers as they play host to the Seattle Seahawks. As we all know, Pittsburgh's coming off of a very terrible defeat at the hands of the New England Patriots Sunday night. Seattle's coming off of a close win against the very game Cincinnati Bengals squad. I see the Steelers pulling out this one because it's a big win that they need to have. They can't risk falling down 0-2. And West Coast teams generally struggle when they come East Coast for these 1 o'clock starts. And it looks like J-Smooth is once again going with the same pick I have. No surprise there. J-Smooth likes to follow in my footsteps. Next up, we have the Minnesota Vikings at the Green Bay Packers. I think Green Bay is going to continue their strong effort to start the season after defeating the Chicago Bears on opening night last Thursday, and they're going to defeat the Minnesota Vikings as well. J-Smooth is going with the Vikings over Green Bay, which could be a good pick. They looked real good in their win last week against the Atlanta Falcons. But I think Green Bay is going to be a bit of a better team this year than Atlanta, so it looks like we're divided on that one. Looks like we have the Buffalo Bills next, going back down to New York to face the Giants this week. Looks like we're both in agreement that the Bills will take another win in New York, this time over those Giants. Buffalo's got a real good defense, and they played pretty well last week, despite a poor start on offense from Josh Allen and his supporting cast. I think they bounced back well. They kept themselves in it, and their defense is going to keep them in a lot of games this season. Then Jacksonville Jaguars are heading to the Houston Texans. Houston suffered a very heartbreaking defeat there in New Orleans on Monday night. Looks like Deshaun Watson had brought them back to victory, only to blow it there in the last minute as they played prevent defense against a team that only needed a field goal to win the game. Didn't make much sense. Looks like J-Smooth has taken the Houston Texans over the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I'll have to agree with him there. Didn't take long for Jacksonville to make me look like an idiot for picking them to win the division this year. Nick Foles goes down with an injury. Miles Jack's punching guys in the head and getting ejected from games. And overall, they just did not look good. But they can always bounce back. They have a good, solid defense there. If they play better, get focused, I still think they're going to be a very competitive team this year. I'm still going with them to win the division this season, but they're going to have to play a lot better than what they played last week. And then we have Arizona heading into Baltimore. Looks like we both are in agreement that Baltimore is going to defeat the Cardinals this week as well. Baltimore, as we know, put up 59 points down in Miami last week against a very poor Miami Dolphins team. I see that offense continuing this week. Going into the season, I was up in the air on the Ravens because I didn't know how well that offense was going to mesh with Lamar Jackson entering the season as a full-time starter. He looked real good in that first game, tossing 5 touchdowns. Rookie Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown looked real good as well. So I feel like that offense is put together pretty well. They got a strong defense too, so I think they're going to continue to roll against Arizona this week. San Francisco heads into Cincinnati. As we recall, Cincinnati gave a good effort there in Seattle last week, only to lose late. San Francisco went down into Tampa Bay and took advantage of a couple Jameis Winston mistakes. They were able to pull out a big road victory to start the season. Looks like J-Smooth is going with Cincinnati to bounce back this week against the 49ers, and I would agree with him as well. It's hard for a West Coast team to start with 2 road games out east to start off the season. I don't see San Francisco pulling off 2 big wins, and I think Cincinnati will bounce back and get off the schneid. New England over Miami, we're both in agreement there. Looks like J Smooth has Oakland defeating Kansas City in one of the afternoon games this Sunday. I don't know what he's thinking there. Seems like to be a pretty dumb pick. Oakland's defense looked good, but that was also against a very poor Denver offense. I will go with Pat Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, who played real well last week down in Jacksonville against a really stout defense. Looks like that offense is going to continue to roll just like they were last year. And then we got a heck of a defensive matchup in the afternoon as well on Sunday with the Chicago Bears going to Denver. Looks like J Smooth is taking Chicago to beat Denver, and I would have to agree with him there. Chicago's defense played real well against Green Bay, and had they gotten anything out of their offense, they would have taken that victory, but they got nothing from the Mitchell Trubisky-led offense, so they're going to have to bounce back. They're going to have to provide some support to Chicago if they want to recapture that division title this year. Denver just did not look good at all Monday night against the Oakland Raiders, and I think that's going to continue this week as they're going to struggle against the Chicago Bears team that's looking to pick up their first win of the season. And then in their other afternoon game this Sunday, we have the New Orleans Saints heading to the LA Rams, rematch of last year's NFC title game, this year taking place in LA. Looks like J Smooth is taking the Saints to pick up a big win in LA. I'm going to have to disagree with him there. I liked what I saw out of LA last week on the road in Carolina. New Orleans seemed to struggle a bit there against Deshaun Watson and the Texans, and the Rams have a much better offense to go along with a much better defense as well. So I feel like the Rams are going to continue to roll here, pick up another big win, and break the Saints' hearts once again. And in the Sunday night game, Philadelphia is heading to Atlanta for a big matchup. Atlanta is going to need this win after a poor showing against the Minnesota Vikings in Week 1. The Eagles were able to bounce back after getting behind big against the Washington Redskins to overcome a 17-point deficit to win their home opener. I feel like they're going to continue rolling as they did in that second half of that first game, and they're going to carry over into Atlanta on Sunday night, and they're going to pick up a big win. And it looks like J Smooth is in agreement with me as well. Like I said, he usually follows in my footsteps, no surprise there. And in the big Monday night game, the Cleveland Browns, prime time already. See if they can bounce back in New York against the Jets, who put up a good fight against the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo's just got a really strong defense, so Jets struggled there on offense, but they were able to keep it close and stayed in the game most of the game, but were not able to overcome a late touchdown by John Brown. I'm going to have to go with Cleveland picking up a big win here in Week 2. I thought they were going to lose that Week 1 game against Tennessee. I just had a feeling that felt like they were going to run into a brick wall there as they hyped themselves up all this offseason, only to find out that hype doesn't win championships. Playing and winning games wins championships. So I feel like that's going to be a good loss for them, suffering that Week 1 loss against Tennessee, and they're going to bounce back with a big win against the New York Jets in Week 2. Looks like J Smooth is in agreement with me there. That wraps up this episode. Nice quick episode as we preview Week 2 and give you our picks. Keep an eye out for us next Thursday as we give you our Week 3 picks. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can listen to us on YouTube, Google Podcasts, and on SoundCloud, and hopefully iTunes soon. Thanks once again for listening to the Dorks Talk Sports Podcast. See you soon.